From Missouri.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise to talk about a very ill-advised plan that we have before us right now that puts Ukraine first and America last. Now, for the, I'm going to say, 25 people in the country that may have tuned in to the last time I was on this floor earlier today, to now, you might notice one big difference. I have a different tie on. So in between the last time and now, I worked out. As you know, Madam President, you can't skip leg day. So I did that. In preparation, of course, for the congressional baseball game, which is just a mere few months away now. So I figured while I was going to do that, I had a little time, a lot of energy. I have but yet 1 hour to give to this, that I would switch ties. So, breaking news. I will say, though, that standing here in a very sort of contrived effort that the majority leader has put forth, well, I guess I should say, actually, he's not making any effort to make this look like it's a real activity of the world's most deliberative body. There are no amendments being considered for a $95 billion foreign aid package. It's being rushed to get done just before guess who gets to go to Munich? Chuck Schumer. So we've got to get this done without any amendments so that the majority leader can glad hand with other global leaders and talk about how he's delivering for Ukraine. All the while, the people that we represent are clamoring for action, for something to secure our southern border. And I know the fig leaf that was offered last week that lasted about 24 hours before people could pick apart the language and realize it took us backwards on immigration law. That wasn't anything other than trying to get a few more votes for Ukraine. So if you want to understand why there's so much dysfunction about this whole process, all you need to understand is that the Ukraine piece of this has always been the center of gravity. Israel aid is held hostage to it. This 4-month exercise to get, some language that was rejected was about getting more support for Ukraine. So here we are. A mere, I guess, hours away from a vote that some of my colleagues have told me this is going to be the most important vote I'll ever cast. I cannot help but think, as someone who has run statewide in Missouri 3 times in 6 years, what an utter disconnect. What we're doing right now is to where real America is. When I am back in Missouri, and I go back and forth every week, I live in the St. Louis area. What people want to talk to me about is what's going on in their family, the fact that when they go to the grocery store every week, they're hit with that sticker shock that's never really gone away. For a younger person that's trying to buy their first house, it's literally twice as expensive as it was just, a few years ago. We've got 9 million people that have come across our southern border. We don't know who they are. We don't know where they're at. Some of the most strenuous objections that we have are from immigrants who've come here legally, who wait in line, who did the right things. People who don't understand why Our energy policy punishes working families who just want affordable, reliable energy, who are lectured by elites like John Kerry who fly on private jets to Davos and then tell working families all the things that they should live without. That's what they care about. Now, as a United States Senator, I don't believe that we shouldn't have a debate about Ukraine, but I can honestly say there's not been a person that has come up to me and said, you know what, Eric, what I really want you to do up there is send another $61 billion to Ukraine. That's what I really want you to do. My priority is for you to go up there and do that when our border is not secure, when terrorists are streaming across the border, when fentanyl is streaming across the border, when women and children are being raped and trafficked to the tune of $100 million a week. That's the economic value of the human trafficking alone. The cartels have never had it so good. American families are struggling, but the cartels have become wealthy beyond belief because of policies from this administration that have devastated our border, devastated our immigration laws, flooded our streets with drugs and crime. And perhaps there could be no more emblematic image of all of this than what we saw just last week with a couple of people who came here illegally, beat up some cops, got out of jail in a matter of hours and did the double bird to the camera, telling the American people exactly what they thought of them. I mean, I really can't, I can't think of a better symbol of what this administration has wrought on the American people than that. And there'll be all kinds of disingenuous stuff to shift blame, but people are smart. They know exactly what's happening. And, you know, I do come from Missouri, and before I was Attorney General, I served in the state Senate. And like in most states, they're actually, for all the issues that every state has in working through things, you know, our constitutional republic and our democracy can be a messy thing. It's supposed to be that way. It's supposed to be difficult to get things done because our founders believe that one of the ways you protect individual liberties is spread out that power so it's not efficiently taking money from people and efficiently taking away their God-given rights. And so, you know, in Missouri, the one thing they have to do is pass a budget. It's the only thing they're constitutionally required to do. And there's a date. I think it's May 15th. And so they got to do that. So the House, there's a consensus revenue estimate that comes out in December where I'm sure this is true in California and other states, where they kind of decide, the different parties and branches decide what they think they're going to take in, how much they have to spend, and then they craft a budget. And that process begins in December-ish. They come in January. And the hearings begin, you know, in full force. And people come and they advocate and they make their arguments. Subcommittees report to committees. Committees then report bills out. It goes to the House floor. All the while, the Senate is having their own hearings, anticipating House bills, because it has to originate in the House, and it comes over, and they work on that, and then they have something, they report to the Senate, and then they go to a conference committee. And guess what? They craft the budget. You disagree with it. It might be too much spending. It might be not enough spending for your taste. It may not have done all the things you wanted it to do, but there is a product that people have had input on. They can amend things. We don't do that here at all. We don't do it. I talked about it when I was on the floor earlier today. We don't do it. It's a travesty. It's a travesty for this constitutional republic because the very frustration that you see in this instance or in CR debates and the deadline politics that this town's gotten used to, is all because there are just simply no vehicles. There's no way for people to advocate for the people that they represent. We go to lunches. Nobody told me about that, by the way, that we have lunch together every day. I love it. I mean, I love getting to know my Republican colleagues. I'm sure the Democrats feel the same. But what if actually what we've seen here in the last couple of days, where senators come out here and talk about the things that they believe in, and there's more than just a couple people at a time, what if we did that all the time? Maybe I'm just the new guy. But what if we did that? And the senator from California and the senator from Missouri, we would offer amendments. And you know what? We might find out that there's actually some things we could work on together. Or there's some things we're just going to be on a different team. But guess what happens? There's a few people in charge that keep us very separated. They keep us in those lunches. And we spin around. And a couple people negotiate a bill. We don't know the details. We're told you can't offer amendments. We're told that the tree is filled. What if 95 of us said, we're done with that? We're done with it. Instead of this thunderdome you've created for this limited contact, we're going to disperse the power to individual members, like it was supposed to be. Like when this place was created. The Senate, the United States Senate, is a unique institution in human history. There's never been anything like it. It was conceived of an idea that, we had 3 branches, but within the bicameral Article 1 branch, there was going to be one branch that had 6-year terms and they were staggered. You had to be a little bit older to serve. I don't know if they ever thought that the median age would be 68. But it is, or I think, something like that. Whatever. I digress. But no matter, we're supposed to sort of deliberate on these things. And that it would take a little bit more than just a simple majority. In fact, we didn't have cloture being filed like for everything, like for some, appointment to the zoo commission. That there was a little bit of a social contract that happened in this place. And I know this is really process-oriented, and I'm going to get to other stuff, but I do think it's important. Because I actually believe that what a couple people in this place, including the majority leader, are really afraid of is that what if we actually get a taste for what it's like to have an impact on our own? What if we figure out we don't need them to tell us what to do? I don't need that. I don't need somebody telling me how to vote. I would think that the 100 of us who campaigned so hard and got around our states and listened to people, I don't need that. I'm open to advice, always. I don't think I have everything figured out. But I also think that in talking to people, and listen, I don't pretend to know everything. I think you have to approach this place with some amount of humility talk about an honor of a lifetime, but in 100 years, I was the 2000th senator. I'm not sure many people in 100 years will know that. Maybe my grandkids. I hope my kids would tell my grandkids that, but I don't know. The point is, our lives are very finite. The roles we play here are very serious and important. But I just think this place can be so much more than what it is. And this kind of hollowed out shell of what was supposed to be the greatest legislative body ever conceived. We don't do those things. I lament that, and I think what I was trying to say was, I've talked to plenty of people, and I've tried to meet and gonna meet with every senator, Republican or Democrat, individually. It takes a little while with our schedules. We're not on the floor very much voting, but we're all very busy. But I've just found that there's really some unique conversations that you can have with people about not only what's important to them and how you can work together, but a desire to sort of open this place up a little bit. And I think that what we're seeing play out here is kind of emblematic of it. Regardless of how you feel about this particular issue, regardless of how you feel about, this is the most important vote you'll ever cast, or I can't believe that we're sending $61 billion when we won't, secure our own southern border. Regardless of where you fall on that continuum or that spectrum, I would hope that we can recognize individually and collectively that this is broken. I mean, look at what's happening with the appropriations process. I don't know what's going to happen in a few weeks. We're going to presumably vote on this stuff and come back, and then guess what? We got another deadline. And if you don't support this bill, you want to shut the government down. Meanwhile, the majority leader in this place has spent 8 hours and 13 months on appropriations bills. Something tells me, I don't know, I'm a lawyer, I'm not a detective, that there's a reason for that. There might be a reason why he doesn't want those on the floor. He doesn't want an open discussion. And he's not alone. There is a very natural sense to desire to sort of aggregate power. But we've had the Appropriations Committee voted out every bill. But Eric, they originate in the House. Well, we have a number of vehicles. Not to mention, we could just send a message about what our priorities are in the Senate, whether I agree with them or not, on Senate bills. I guess it's too hard, but I don't think that's really the reason. And I've heard, well, senators they come to us and don't want to take tough votes. We're protecting them. I don't believe that. I don't believe that. I think it's because who could have imagined the power that somebody could have to unveil an omnibus before us? The flashing lights. Wait till I unveil this before you all. You won't have time to read it, and you can't amend it. You can't really affect it. But the lobbyists in town know who to go to. And I just believe that is the source of some of the disconnect. I think there's a real danger in being insulated in this town, in this bubble here. Caring too much about what the New York Times or the Washington Post has to say about you. That somewhere along the way, and I don't care where you're from, whether you're in a deep blue state or a deep red state, you lose a little bit of what people actually at home are connected to or what they care about. And this bill here couldn't be more disconnected from American priorities. This bill sends $95 billion to foreign countries. Debate the merits of that as you will, without actually, think of the message that sends. We care so much. Think about the issues that we're confronting as a country. All of them. This is what we're doing. This is what we've chosen. And I don't care. Like I said, I feel good from the workout. I don't care that I have to come out here for my time. You know? It doesn't bother me. I wish I had more time. But this is how we're pressing people. We got to get this done. Now, I know on the back end of this is a trip to Munich. I'm not going. I kind of wish I was. I'd love to have some conversations with some of the folks who don't understand, who maybe want to look at people like me as like a zoo animal. Don't you understand? I do understand. And by the way, if it was such an existential threat, where has your country been? Why aren't you at 2% of your GDP? I mean, I had a conversation with some high-level government officials in a European country. They're pulling back from that number because they have to address the flooding that happened in their country this year. Imagine that. Putting the interests of their own country ahead of spending money on a foreign war. I am a little surprised, though, by the groupthink that sort of embodies anybody that raises legitimate issues or questions as being referred to as some sort of like Putin lover. To me, that is a very soft defense that reveals deficiencies in an argument. I think we can have a reasonable conversation like, to what end? What are we seeking to gain? How much will it cost us? Can we be effective? Can there be accountability? All those amendments are blocked. All those conversations are blocked. I think that the American people will be shocked to know the amount of time and energy we spend just on this issue. I know it's important to people, but I've been, in my first 13 months, I've been shocked at the amount of time that is spent on this one thing. Not on the border, not on energy policy, not on the government's willingness to suppress free speech, not on the fact that we are simply not turning our attention quickly enough to China. I mean, pick it. Mr. President, you might have 10 things, I might have 10 things, but they're all crowded out by this supernova, which is the Ukraine funding. And, you know, the truth is, this is probably going to get out of the chamber sometime in the next whatever, many hours. It's dead in the House. And I think the stubbornness to accept any kind of rational debate or meaningful amendments will ultimately doom all of this. But here we are. And I will also point out that the insistence on some, and I hear Senator Schumer in his comments in the mornings speak glowingly about this and how important it is. Yet he often also, interestingly, casts half of the country, half of Americans often, in the light of radical, extremist, MAGA Republicans, othering half of his countrymen. And you want to understand why people are skeptical of this kind of politics. The deplorables. I actually think there ought to be a drinking game in Washington. Every time Chuck Schumer says extremist or MAGA or Republican, everybody in this town ought to take a drink. This town will be drunk by 10 a.m. It's insane. It's not helpful. And for somebody who, by the way, talks about the importance of bipartisanship, let me offer this as a refresher. Chuck Schumer, if he had it his way and he had 2 more votes, would end the filibuster. It would pack the Supreme Court. It would add states to the union. And he would federalize our elections. I'm not buying it. And so he's ramrodding this thing through without any amendments. That's not what our republic is supposed to be. It's not what the Senate's supposed to be. So there's a lot of problems with this bill. But I want to point out, a lot's been said about, well, you talk about border, but you had your shot. You got everything you wanted. Not what I wanted. And my Republican colleagues who've been at the lunches can testify under oath about what I said all along. I don't believe that this administration is interested in securing our border at all. And I speak with some experience on this because I was Attorney General of the state that sued the administration on a few different measures and had to go back in court to get them abide by court orders. It's not in their DNA. So we're getting exactly what this administration wants. And no language change is going to change that. So let's just be honest. Now, I think that they might see how far gone this has gotten. Like many socialist enterprises, arguably well-meaning people realize they've created a total disaster. And that's what we have now. That's what we have at our southern border. Because the open borders crowd is in charge. So to my Democratic colleagues, you have opened up Pandora's box. And the ultimate head fake here about having some, border bill that made things worse isn't going to cut it. Nobody's buying it. Just like nobody's buying that Bidenomics is great. Tell that to the single mom that's paying 40% more at the grocery store every week. So for me, I just want the Biden administration to enforce our existing laws and go back to the policies that were working under President Trump. I didn't want some, 400-page bill that did a couple of things that I sincerely objected to. The first of which was to empower these asylum officers to effectively grant citizenship at the border. To grant asylum at the border, 5 years later, they're citizens. Outside of the judicial process, and at a hurried clip we've never seen before. That's what would have happened. And by the way, work permits that were immediate. You talk about a magnet for the cartels, that's exactly what that would have created. The second big objection was, how in the world could you possibly cut out courts of jurisdiction that have traditionally handled immigration matters forever, like in Texas? Where did they go? To some other border jurisdiction? No. Legal challenges went to the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals, perhaps the most liberal circuit in the whole country. I'm sure that was just a coincidence. So there were real problems, and in my view, took us backwards. I'm not disparaging any individual about it, but as a senator, you have the right to analyze the text, which, by the way, was withheld from everyone until Sunday night at 7, with Chuck Schumer saying, get ready to vote on Wednesday. I don't know. I guess, Mr. President, I haven't been here long enough to think that that's okay. regardless how you feel about it. No state does that. So, how did we get to where we're at? Ladies and gentlemen, this was, on day one, an effort by this administration to undo everything that was effective under President Trump. We had gotten to the lowest level of illegal immigration we had seen in a generation, in 40 years, in December of 2020. I spoke yesterday and used the analogy like in the head of the Super Bowl and the Chiefs won, thank goodness. But it would be like having the best defense in the history of the NFL one year, and then there's a new coach who didn't like the old coach and said, I got an idea. We're going to play without a defense next year. Because Trump. Totally insane. Results totally predictable. Although I'm not sure anybody could have fully imagined 9 million people here legally. But that's where we're at. And so from day one, Joe Biden was determined to undo all of the things that President Trump had done. Now, there's a couple of reasons for it. One could be total and utter incompetence. I don't know. The president can't remember when he was vice president. Maybe that's it. Another reason could be just this reflexive desire to undo everything that Trump did. That's possible. Trump derangement syndrome is real. It's treatable, but it takes a lot of time to get over that. Certainly not on day one. Could be it. The other rationale could be the people that even just a decade earlier were on the fringes of the Democrat Party, who at the time were in think tanks writing white papers about the benefits of open borders and how unfair it was that these arbitrary lines disconnect people, or that everyone has a right to live wherever they want and they should receive government benefits no matter what. Maybe those people graduated. Maybe they didn't just graduate from an Ivy League institution with a gender studies degree. Maybe they graduated to the highest levels of government. Maybe they occupy positions in the Oval Office and have broken through. And if I don't run out of time, there's a very interesting article about this sort of a behind-the-scenes debate happening in the Biden administration. Look, I am standing in front of the desk of Harry Truman. Harry Truman newsflash, was a Democrat. There is no way under God's green earth the party of Harry Truman would be okay with this. But a lot can happen between here and the wedding. So here we are. So, what happened? I don't know the motive. I can, make a guess. Only God knows. But what I do know are the actions that took place. in the myriad of executive actions, reversals, that have caused this historic crisis at our southern border. On January 20th, 2021, I, Joe Biden, gives the oath. First day, terminates the national emergency at the southwestern border, halting the construction of the border wall. Of course we need to do that, right? That was Trump's idea. On January 20th, 2021, Joe Biden reversed the Trump-era executive order and several proclamations that put restrictions on immigration from countries associated with terrorism. Who thinks that's a good idea? In what world, what color is the sky in a world where we think that's a good idea? I guess because Trump. Or you're open borders. Or you're incompetent. On January 20th, 2021, Joe Biden announced a 100-day moratorium on deportations and immigration enforcement. What? Why? Why would we do that? Forever, including administrations, Democrat administrations I may have disagreed with on a bunch of policy positions, it's been the position of Republican and Democrat administrations that our immigration policy is that if you come here illegally, you are detained and then you are deported. Unless there's some exception to law, like, say, asylum that's legit, 9 out of 10 are not legit. So what did he do? We're not doing that anymore. We've thought a lot about this, America, and we actually think that we shouldn't deport anyone anymore. On January 20th, 2021, Joe Biden revoked a Trump-era executive order that directed the federal government to employ all lawful means to enforce the immigration laws of the United States. Trump Executive Order 1376-8. Let me repeat that. The position of the Biden administration was to not enforce the immigration laws of the United States. I would love to hear one of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle try to defend that to their voters in a town hall or something. But because Trump, or because open borders, or because incompetence, I don't know. And that was just the first day. So get ready. On February 2nd, 2021, a couple weeks later, so they took a break. The Biden administration, after on day one, undoing all the things that kind of work, or some of the things, had a little meeting, I guess, that said, well, we got more to do. We can't just not enforce immigration laws, and we can't just prevent people from terrorist countries coming here, and we can't build the border wall. What else should we do? Issue executive order that began processing asylum claims at the border. Okay. Here comes the fast pass. Here comes the express lane. Also in that same month of February 2020, the Biden administration stopped applying Title 42 expulsions to children at the border. Title 42 was a very effective means of providing our Border Patrol agents of turning people around. That's gone. okay? Still more to do. Before President Trump implemented Title 42, migrants could cross illegally, ask for asylum, and allowed to be in the United States, and they would be processed. So Title 42 changed that. Now we're back to the future. All of a sudden now, what do we have? Catch and release. February 17th, so the same month, we're not done yet. 2021, the CDC exempted unaccompanied alien children from Title 42 expulsion requirements. More of the whittling away of one of the more effective means of actually turning people away. Because to this administration, everyone deserves to be here. You don't have to wait in line. Here are your government benefits. Can we give you Medicaid and Medicare? How about food stamps? Of course, this is the humane thing to do, right? They would tell us. Hold on. It ain't. On March 10th, 2021, the Biden administration announced the reinstatement of the Central American Minors Program and expanded on it June 15th, 2021. In April and again of October 2021, DHS canceled contracts to build the border wall. Well, it was Trump's wall. We have to end the border wall. What does that mean for taxpayers? Well, I'll tell you what it means. $140,000 a day to contractors to not build the wall. Think about that for a minute. Materials have been bought. Contractors are paid $140,000 a day to not build the wall. Now, in a town that spends trillions, $140,000 a day, well, where I come from, people still count their money. That's about 3 times the median family income in Missouri for a year. So don't tell me it isn't anything. It's an insult to taxpayers who literally, my dad works 7 days a week in the midnight shift. He got a week off for vacation. All that money taken out by the government that he, if he had more of it, would have spent on us, on our family, is taken out. And to tell taxpayers that you're on the hook to pay a contractor $140,000 a day is insulting. And by the way, if that wasn't enough, they auctioned off the materials that were already bought that could have been built to have a wall. And in one instance, over $4 million worth of materials were auctioned off for just over $100,000. On October 29th, 2021, the Biden administration canceled the migrant protection protocols. What's that? That's remain in Mexico. So when I was Attorney General in Missouri, we filed suit along with Texas because my contention was every state was a border state. This was a very, very effective way of processing, but also sending a very important signal to people who wanted to come here illegally by way of the cartels. Listen, if you have any knowledge of what goes on at the southern border, the cartels are meeting these people as they traverse, threatening them, extorting them, sexually assaulting them, abusing them. It's a nasty business. So don't tell me that this is humane. That, AOC crying, in front of the cameras in 2019, was what your focus was. NBC Nightly News, if if President Trump were still in office and what was happening right now at the border, people were drowning in traffic like they are, they would be camped out. They would be camped out at the southern border. But meanwhile, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris can't be bothered to go down there. You know what I wish? I wish Chuck Schumer would cancel his trip to Munich and go to the southern border. He won't do that. He's going to be a god over there. Which is why we're in at 1:15 a.m. Again, it doesn't bother me. Doesn't bother me. So anyway, with Remain in Mexico, we file a lawsuit, we win. They'd done it the wrong way, rushed it through. In fact, it goes all the way to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court says, yeah, your preliminary and temporary injunction, it's in effect. We send it to the lower court to keep this enforced and for a trial on the merits. Biden administration totally ignored it. So when you ask me, should we be negotiating with them about some new border provisions? I don't trust them. So don't tell me you got everything you wanted. It's not what I wanted. It's a bad bill as far as I'm concerned. But more importantly than that, we're dealing with an administration that's not interested in enforcing border laws. I lived it. Now, eventually, the temporary wins on Title 42 and Remain in Mexico went away. And the Biden administration got their way. So we fought as long as we could, but ultimately, under our immigration laws, the president has immense discretion. And so that's why we have the problems that we have. So it was a very effective deterrent. Having Mexico essentially as the waiting room did a couple of things. It deterred the cartels, but it also prevented the catch and release problem. And I really hope, I don't know. I mean, it's hard to know because we're not on this floor debating things together. And as much as we have these conversations amongst one another, I'm on the Armed Services Committee. We try to work well together in a bipartisan way. That committee actually functions. And we have amendments. And we had a bill. It came on the floor. And you disagree, and it went to the House, and we passed it. I'm grateful for my opportunity to serve on that committee. And we got a lot of issues that we need to address as a country, including, China that has a bigger Navy, not a better Navy, but a bigger Navy than we have. And one of the reasons why I'd like to see these things broken up, so we actually have real debate on these things individually, but that ship has sailed for now. My hope is that we win the war ultimately on that people see the wisdom in that. I'm going to keep fighting for that. I think it's the right thing to do. I see the chair of the Appropriations Committee. I appreciate her work and the work of Senator Collins on the Appropriations Committee. I long for the day that individual appropriations bills can come out here, whether I agree with them or not. And I know they're working on that. And I hear tales of a Senate of long ago, like it's folklore, of a time where you could come out here and offer an amendment and have a vote, and it was pending. And you'd figure it out. There'd be some social pressure if Senator Lee or something had 80 amendments. I mean, maybe that, people would say, Senator Lee, how about 8 instead or something? He might agree to that, whatever. But the point is, we would figure it out. We would figure it out. We don't have to have one person as the gatekeeper for everything, who comes from on high with tablets carved in stone. That is not what this place is supposed to be. So Remain in Mexico, as much as I fought it personally as an attorney general, we had some temporary victories, went away. On September 9th, 2022, the Biden administration reversed the Trump-era public charge rule. On December 13th, 2022, the Biden administration sued the state of Arizona to force them to remove the shipping containers they placed to close the gaps at the border wall that existed there. Sound familiar? Texas tried to do the same thing. So when you have a situation where the federal government, who does a ton of things it's not supposed to do, one of the things it's supposed to do is secure the southern border. But what happens when they don't do that? States like Arizona and Texas are going to say, we have a population to protect. We have citizens who are at risk. We have fentanyl in our communities. We have high crime. We have human trafficking. The Biden administration has shown their true colors. They will sue you. They will take you to court. If you do that, they'll be held to pay. Meanwhile, they don't do anything to stop it. And there's a lot more, and I could go on. But these are the results of Joe Biden's actions. Not because of some deficiency in the law. There isn't. We could improve the law. I'm more than willing to have that kind of debate, but that's not the bill that we had in front of us. It wasn't. And so it'll be used as a way to sort of like act like Republicans were. Give me a break. No one in their right mind in this country believes that anybody other than Joe Biden's responsible for 9 million people being here illegally. Just like nobody believes in this country that our economy is in better shape for working people because of Joe Biden. It's amazing how fast an hour can go. There's so much to talk about. But I do want to talk a little bit about, before my time is up, the foreign aid here. I just want to again point out the real disconnect that the people in this country, regardless of who they vote for in a presidential election or in Senate races, feel with the amount of conversation we have here about foreign aid and borders of other countries and our unwillingness, again, to force the Biden administration to secure our own. There were a lot of ideas to do that. None of them were given an opportunity to really have a full airing. And in many instances, we're funding both sides of these things. We're about to send, this chamber, it's not going to happen, by the way, because it's the DOA in the House. So like a bunch of hamsters on a reel here, on a wheel, alienating members along the way who would like to work together. We're funding both sides of it because on one hand, $61 billion could be going to Ukraine, but we're actually helping Russia by our ridiculous energy policy. Joe Biden's war on domestic energy production is real. The restrictions you just put on LNG and our export opportunities we have as a country are real. If your mission is to disempower Russia and Putin, you've essentially sided with climate alarmists instead. No country in the history of the world has done either one of these things. No country has ever willingly opened up their border to the level that we see right now. And no country has ever willingly ceded their energy. Since the beginning of time, tribes and nations have gone to war for natural resources. Conquest and war was predicated on the idea of gaining more. We have everything we'll ever need right under our feet. We don't need to go anywhere. We don't need to be an imperial nation. We got it. But Here's the problem. You can't check the box anymore if you're on the Democrat side about being virtuous. It's insane. Let's be all the above. Let's be dominant. Let's be independent. It's in our national security interest. Let's send it to our friends and allies around the world. We're not doing that. We're on both sides of that equation. And as it relates to Israel in my final couple of minutes here, I do want to say I had an amendment to pull Israel out here, to have a separate vote on it, but they're being held hostage to Ukraine. It's cynical, but it's true. I've been to Israel. Anyone who has understands the dangers, the proximity of the threats. All of us have had moving personal experiences there, including a mass I attended at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, and moving experience at the Western Wall with Jewish friends, and to think about what happened there on October 7th, and to see, I don't think a lot of senators had reservations about going to the private viewing of that video, but I thought it was incumbent upon me to go as a senator. And some of the things I saw in that private viewing for 55 minutes, you can never unsee. And so my contention and my argument here all along has been, I've never been in the category of lumping this together, just like I've never been in the category of lumping all the appropriations bills together in an omnibus or minibuses, quite frankly. I understand the constraints, but if we plan a little bit better or make some reforms, I would hope that we could do them individually, regardless of how it plays out and who wins. I think that's important. But in that same bill, helping the people who support terrorism in Gaza isn't solving any problems. We can't have it both ways here. The pay for slave program by the Palestinian Authority is real. They use government money to pay terrorists' families for killing Jews and Christians. And the pivot by the Biden administration now for political reasons away from Israel is not unnoticed. But that's where we're at. So, Mr. President, I would just say that the idea that we would be moving a bill that has America last for all this debate over 4 months, more than that, quite frankly, for a year, because it was involved in the CR debates. For all that debate that we've had, this chamber is about ready to pass a bill that sends billions and billions and billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars to Ukraine to secure their border, but does nothing to secure America's border. And the working folks back home that feel left behind by this town and their ridiculous priorities and being $34 trillion in debt and shipping jobs overseas, they see it. It's a total disconnect. And I, for one, am going to stand with them. I'm going to stand with those people, my people, the folks back home, and against permanent Washington that, come hell or high water, want to send a disconnected package with billions to Ukraine and nothing for the American people. And with that, Mr. President, I yield.